What is up, guys? If you're watching this video, you are interested in the most in-depth, comprehensive guide on Stormgate settings to revolutionize your play. Well, that's exactly what you're going to be getting. I played RTS for over 10 years now, pretty much all of my adult life. I peaked Diamond 2 in StarCraft 2 and have been playing since Wings of Liberty. I've also been playing since Alpha on Stormgate, so I have a lot of experience in game here to kind of guide you through all of the settings that you need to optimize, because there's a ton of things in Stormgate that are really inoptimal, and I'm going to be showing you through this fully timestamped and chaptered guide. Yes, I do respect your time, and everything is fully timestamped and chaptered. I'm going to be showing you how to actually revolutionize your play and really optimize each and every setting in game. I do have one thing to ask before we do, and that is, if you do find this helpful, please like the video and please share so more people can have access to this information. Now let's get into the meat of the video. Alright guys, so here's the meat and potatoes of the video. We are in the menu tab. Now, to get to this, by default, you will be hitting escape. I'm going to be showing you what I would recommend that rebind to be. But basically what we want to do is we want to hit the options menu. And then I'm going to have a section of the video for each of these tabs: video, sound, gameplay, and keyboard and mouse. Keyboard and mouse and gameplay are the two most important you have to worry about. But let's start off with a short section on the video. I personally, for recording purposes and playing in windowed mode, I would always recommend you play in full screen. 100% always recommend you play in either full screen or borderless windows. And for frame rates, I would recommend playing in full screen. In terms of display resolution, you should only play at one display resolution, which is your monitor's native resolution. Again, the only reason I have this at a different setting is for recording purposes, because there are some weirdnesses of how this game records in ultra wide. Next up, we have the frame rate limit on the menu. Unimportant. It doesn't really matter what you put this at. I put it at 180 frames per second just because that's slightly over what my monitor will display, but this is completely unimportant. Frame rate limit, highly would recommend you put it on unlimited. You want to be getting as much frame rate as absolutely possible. For graphics quality, it doesn't matter that much, guys. This is not a realistic looking game. The graphics aren't that great, to be totally honest, but I would recommend putting it on ultra if your system can handle it, which most systems can. So yes, I would recommend putting it on ultra in terms of visual quality, but you can put it on any of these, and if you have system issues, just go down to medium or low. You're not going to see that big of a difference. In terms of VSync, I would 100% recommend this being off at all times. You do not want VSync being on. If you do have a G-Sync capable monitor, then that's what you want to be using. Don't be using VSync. It's really bad. It's going to introduce artificial latency, and you do not want it. In terms of brightness, I found 100% to be really good on my particular monitor. You do have to adjust this depending on your lighting conditions in your room and also your monitor, so I will leave that setting up to your discretion because it is very individualistic. In terms of anti-aliasing method, personally, I prefer FXAA. It's probably, I would say, what I would suggest you using. However, I am using the NVIDIA DLSS, so that's not really an option. But yes, that's what I would recommend. This talking about screen percentage of resolution, this is talking about using NVIDIA DLSS. If you do have a NVIDIA graphics card, I would highly recommend using NVIDIA DLSS. As you see, I have it clicked on. It also will allow you to turn on frame generation if you have an RTX 4000 series card or over. I actually am running on my main computer on a 3080 Ti, but I do have a laptop that has a 4000 series card. So therefore, I do keep this on because sometimes I do play on my laptop. Super resolution, what you want to be having is either one of two options. If your frame rate's already high enough, I would highly suggest you using DLAA. That's very similar to like a super sampling version of anti-aliasing. So it's a NVIDIA anti-aliasing method, and I do think it looks quite good. If you do not want this setting to be on, then I would highly recommend you using quality. Because like I said, this game isn't that demanding on system specs, so that is what I feel to be the best. In terms of sharpness, you can adjust this. This just kind of changes how the image is looking if you are using NVIDIA DLSS. If you are not using NVIDIA DLSS, then as you see, this will be completely unchecked. You can't change this at all. So if you want to mess around with the sharpness, you can. I think it looks fine. And I don't believe messing with the sharpness really does much for me. Let us move on to sound. The most important thing you can do here is lower the volume. Like most games, this game blasts you in the ears, so I would highly recommend you pulling down the master volume to at least 50%. I also have my music volume at 50, and I may even pull it lower, because honestly, right now, the music isn't that good in the game, and so I prefer to have other music playing. But if you do like the music, you can adjust this. Sound effects volume, I would keep fairly high, between 80 and 100%. Voice volume, it just depends on if you like the little units voices. I do actually like the unit voices, so I keep that at 100%, but that's up to personal preference. Audio output device, of course, it comes down to, you want this to be going to your Bluetooth headphones, you want this to be going to your, earbuds, whatever you're using. I'm using a studio sound earphone, so that's what I have it right now. 3D headphones, I do have 3D headphones. If you do, you can check this on. High dynamic range, if you have this as a capability, you should check this on. If not, both of these you can just take off and you won't notice too much of a difference. Display subtitles, I don't see how that's going to be very useful right now. If you eventually go into co-op and campaign, then maybe you would want to check this. But personally, I would leave this off for now. But you can check it on if you would like. Now let's go to really important settings, guys. So we are in the gameplay. So let's start right away. Edge scroll. Definitely have edge scroll on. You need edge scroll. Now, I'm going to tell you right now that edge scrolling should not be the primary way you move around the map. And I will show you really quickly. And I'm going to show you actually a tip for this. But there is a better way to move around the map, which is, if I would say, do you want to apply your changes? Yes. Let's say I'm back in on the game. So this is what edge scrolling is. I'm sure most people are aware of that. You basically move the mouse to the edge of your window and you move around. As we know from StarCraft, other RTSs, this is a very, very inefficient way to move around the map. I do keep it on because sometimes if you have a group of units and you're moving them around, you just want to be moving them slightly out of the boundary of the window you're in, and therefore edge scrolling can be useful. But the way you want to be moving around the map is either with F keys. So for instance, here I have my different camera locations bound, and so I can very quickly go between my locations. Generally bases, but it could be attacking locations. You can set this to a large variety of things, and I'm going to be talking about that in its own section, so we won't be discussing that now. But what I would say is probably the most efficient way to move around the map is actually dragging the camera over the map. So like if, for instance, let's say my enemy's base was here and my base was here. So one of the easiest ways is go to the minimap, left click on the minimap, and then you can literally drag. Now, this will give a kind of weird, like laggy drag, but to be honest with you guys, as the game's engine improves, it will get better. And this was the best way to actually move around the map in StarCraft 2, and that's what I would highly, highly recommend. So that's what I would do. But I would recommend you having edge scrolling on because it is useful in certain cases. Just don't overuse it. Drag scroll smoothing. So this is specifically talking about that, like the little bit of like latency that's put on. I would definitely, if you can, I would put this on to high because you will notice probably some difference. Let's see here. Yeah, so you see it kind of smooths it out. I mean, it's still a little janky, to be completely honest with you, because it's moving around the map, but it makes it a little bit better on your eyes. So whatever you guys think there, I do think high does look a little bit better, but it does also slow down the drag scrolling a little bit. So, it is what you want here. But I would recommend keeping it either on low or high instead of off. Inverted drag scrolling. You do not want this on. Do not ever click this on. That will actually like make up go down and down go up. I would not recommend you doing that. But if it works for you, go ahead. Lock mouse to window. Very, very important, guys. Especially if you have like multiple monitors. You want this setting on. You definitely want this setting on. One of the most important settings in the gameplay tab, lock mouse to window. This will prevent you from leaving the window, like here, because I'm actually in a window tab. If I did not have this on, I could actually leave the window. When you're playing online games, that's very dangerous. You don't want that. Show flying unit elevation. I do selection based. I messed around with this and I couldn't notice a massive difference. Basically, if you go to like low ground, high ground, it will show you kind of where the elevation is. I would suggest leaving this on selection based, not a big deal. Show requirements. Unmet only is what I would recommend, what it basically has. I just don't really see this as being super useful because you're going to learn requirements pretty easily. If you want to, you can click this on. I wouldn't recommend having this on. Control groups, very important setting, guys. Very, very important setting. So we have normal, hidden, unclickable, and unassignable. I would recommend staying on normal. So what normal means, guys, for people that don't know, in StarCraft 2, right here, above the command bar, they would have a number of control groups that you had assigned. Here it is on the right-hand side of the menu. So you will see if I click number 1, double click it, it will have all of my attacking units. And you see this is this group. If I have number 2, you will see this will be my basically barracks. If you have number 3, this will be my command centers, etc., etc., etc. So yes, so this will show all your command groups. Now, what does these settings actually do when we're talking about them? So if we go to gameplay and instead of normal, we have hidden, for instance, let's go to hidden. You will see there is no control groups. Even though control groups exist, if I actually hit the numbers, they will still be there, but you can't actually see them. I personally do not like this. Now, unclickable, what that will do is it will basically make it where you can't click the side of the screen. That's not important, guys. That is absolutely not important. I wouldn't recommend using this at all. But if you somehow misclick and are prone to misclick on the right-hand side of the screen, you can put unclickable, and that's totally fine. Unassignable, I have no idea why you would ever choose this option. Let's forget this option ever exists because you will never use it. So really the only two that you would realistically use is if you don't want to see your control groups, you could use hidden. And most of the time you're going to be using normal. And I guess if you somehow misclick on the right-hand side of the screen a lot, you could use unclickable, never use unassignable. So we are going to be using normal, which is what I would recommend for most people. Very, very, very important, guys. Take this setting, which is by default on, automated control groups, click it off. Never have this on. Automated control groups is one of the stupidest things that they have in this game, and you want it off at all times. The reason you want it off is if you are training units and you have this on, it will put them automatically into control groups. You don't need to do this, and I'll be showing you how you can easily add any and all units that you create into control groups much better than what this does. So there is no reason that you should ever use automated control groups. Automated control groups indicators shows when units are added automatically. You see this is grayed out because you should never have this box checked. Now we come to something very interesting, guys, and it's the minimap position. Now this is something very interesting because StarCraft 2 did not have this, and I do think this is really awesome that they put this in. And what this basically does is it will change where the minimap is. So by default, it's on the right-hand side of the screen. But if I click left and hit accept, now when I actually go out, you'll see that my minimap is on the left. This is really, really useful, guys, because a lot of people would like the minimap to be on the left. This is completely down to personal preference. There is no better way here. But I have gotten so used to things being on the right that I will select on the right, but it is something very, very useful. Now, one thing I want to talk about here is console scale. This is something that I've seen no one discuss in Stormgate and is a really important feature. So what console scale will do is it will actually change the scale of all of your command card functions and, most importantly, the minimap. Now, I wish there was some mod or something where we could have a larger minimap with a smaller rest of the console, but unfortunately, you cannot. I will show you how big of a difference this is. So if we put console scale down to 70, you're going to see that we can see a lot more of the screen, which is really good. But the problem is the minimap is a lot smaller. As bad as it looks, and I don't like the way it looks, to be completely frank, but as bad as it looks, the minimap is actually one of the most important features in any serious RTS. So what I would recommend is playing on 120% console scale right now. The reason I would recommend that is because your minimap is gigantic, guys. Your minimap is disgustingly huge. And because of that, you are going to be able to see attacks. You're going to be seeing enemies go across like watchtowers, anything like that, much, much easier. Right now, even though it doesn't look good, and for a creator standpoint, I will probably keep it at like 100 or 105. I've personally been using 105. For anybody that's playing competitively, I would highly recommend you playing at the 120 setting, because even though you're giving up some screen real estate, it's much more important to have a big mini map that you can see much, much easier. So keep it between 105 and 120 is my recommendation. I'm going to be pulling it back down to 105 just for the purposes of this video, because for illustration purposes, the big console size can get very annoying. Now we will go on to one of the most important parts of this video, which is the mouse and keyboard settings. There is a lot of stuff here that is really, really bad, guys, and that you need to change. Number one, I'm primarily focusing this on people that are going to be playing the multiplayer, so I would rebind this setting. It's originally on the tilde key for selecting heroes. If you're not playing co-op right now, then I would just immediately clear this keybind. If you are playing co-op, you can rebind it to something that you're more used to or is better, because I don't think tilde is a very good bind for it anyway. Number 1 through 10 is going to be selecting your control group. So it's literally 1 through 9 and then 0, which is going to be the 10th control group. We'll talk about that in just a moment, because I'm going to be going over control groups and what I think you should be doing. In terms of setting your control groups, this is exactly what you should do. Control 1, Control 2, Control 3, onwards and onwards, just like StarCraft. Add to control groups. So what does this mean? This means that if I have 2 units that are on 2 different control groups, I can add it to the second control group. However, it will not remove it from the first control group. Let's do a example of this. Let's say I have these units here in control group 1. You can see them all in control group 1. Now I select a single unit and I make it in control group 2. So now it's in control group 2. But let's say I want to add something to this control group 2. So I want these 2 Lancers to go in control group 2. I'm going to move them over here, and then I'm going to push Shift 2. Now number 2 is going to have these 3 units. Now this is different from Alt, which is stealing control groups. So for instance, if I wanted to take this dog here and I put Alt 2, okay, now it's going to actually put it in control group just by itself. So this will steal that control group and put it into its own control group. Now this will override whatever was in the control group before. So that's important to realize. But what that does do is it removes it from the first control group. So for instance, you see all of these were originally in control group 1. The dog was originally in control group 1, but because I used Alt instead of Shift, the dog is now taken away from control group 1. So Shift adds, Alt removes, and adds to some other category. So that's just a simple explanation of that. I will go into a video with a bit more detail, but I don't want to get too crazy into that because that's going to be a separate video that I'm going to be making. And if you're interested in that, please subscribe and like this video. And I will be making a complete guide on that very, very soon. So that's what stealing does. Select all army, guys. This is something that happened in StarCraft 2. Now, I would be very careful of using this function, guys, because this is a very dangerous function that you can overuse. But in this game, it's spacebar. I think that's totally fine because spacebar is easy to access. So what that's going to do is that's going to take every attacking unit you have on the field currently. Like I said, I think spacebar is fine for this at the moment. I haven't found any setting that I would use better. But yeah, spacebar is fine. Now we're going to be talking about add all idle select workers to selection, add all workers to selection. These 2 settings I wouldn't change very much. The reason is you're not going to be adding idle workers to many other selections. You're going to be moving them around from base to base. So select all idle workers. I have this on control plus thumb mouse button 2. So if you have any modern gaming mouse, there's going to be at least 2 buttons on that gaming mouse. And what I would do, what I would highly suggest is select idle worker. I would put to one of these thumb mouse buttons. Now, the way that Stormgate works is that if you use this, and let's say I do thumb mouse button number 1, then this is going to be basically control thumb mouse button number 1. So you have to hit control, unfortunately. It won't let you just pick another key. So just realize that, guys. these need to be the same button. So since I like thumb mouse button number 2, so then this is going to be control thumb mouse button number 2. Now, how is this important and how can this be used? So basically what this is going to do for you is, let's say I take a bunch of idle workers here. I got a ton of minerals here. This is just an example custom map. So let's say I have all these idle workers here. So they're just all sitting here. Okay, so if I hit thumb mouse button number 2, so I click 1, it's going to take a single idle worker, and I can basically control that idle worker. Now, if I hit control and I hit the same button, it's going to take all of my idle workers. This is very, very useful when you want to move them to a different base. Let's say I want them to go over here, and I want them to build a command center. There you go. So I can just make them all go over there, and this is really, really good when I'm moving workers from base to base. So very, very good function. That's exactly what I would recommend there, is have it on one of your mouse buttons. That is, I think, the most efficient way to do things. Quick train, quick build. Okay, now this is actually a really, really cool function in the game. Quick macro, quick train. So what this will do, guys, this is really, really good, and I would recommend keeping it exactly the way it's in the game. So what this will do is it will basically allow you to train units, research things, all from the command card. So if I hit Q, for instance, I can basically build any of these structures. So Q, and then let's say I hit S, I can now build a number of supply depots. And basically what it will do is it will pull workers and basically get all these to be built. This is much better than the old system, which was grabbing a worker and then literally causing it, like hitting Z and then hitting S, and then it'll manually build. So by using this command card, I can basically quickly construct a large amount of structures. This should be left exactly the way it is. I'm going to be going over this whole system and how to use it optimally in the next video in this series. I'm going to be talking about all of these command cards and the way that you should use this optimally. Again, this is more of a settings guide, so I didn't want to get into that too much because it's going to get way too long. But believe me, this can be really, really helpful and is definitely a really important way to play optimally. Don't mess with zoom. Don't mess with drag scroll. That's not really important. Now we go to focus jump locations. So basically, this is for making camera groups. And if you see, set locations is control and focus locations is the actual F keys. This is just like StarCraft. I would highly recommend you keep these. What this will do is if I, let's say, go to this location here on the map and I hit control F1, okay? And then I go to this other location and I hit control F2. Then if I hit F1, it will immediately go to where I put F1 at. And if I hit F2, I'll immediately go to F2. This is extremely important to train units quickly, to be able to micro in a battle quickly, and to be able to work on your base. Now, in StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2, this was much more important for base management. But in Stormgate, I would highly recommend you use this more for battling and more for tactical positions on the map. Because even if I hit F2, let's say I'm up here, and then I hit the command card, I can actually still build. I can still train units even when I'm looking at a battle. So because of that, it makes it way, way less important to have your camera control groups on your bases. Now, there is still some uses for this. And like I said, this is the topic of another video and how to optimize that. So let's move on for now. And if you're interested in the next video, just subscribe. I'm going to be having a full guide on this very, very soon. Command cards, don't worry about this. This is basically how the units are laid out on the command card. I won't be covering that. That's not really important for the purposes of this video. Changing focus groups backwards and forwards. This is actually very important, and this is a big setting that is a disaster in the original settings. So originally it has this as tab, and it has this as shift tab. Well, what you're going to notice is if you hit shift tab and you're playing this game on Steam, which probably all of you are, what it will do is it will actually pull up your Steam interface, because that by default is shift tab. So this was really poorly thought out, guys. Now I'm just going to show you in game what this actually does. So let's say I have these units. What these units will do is by hitting tab, I'm going to be selecting all the different types of the units here. So like, for instance, I have the medics here selected. Then I'm going to be, oh, okay, well now it's going to be the Vulcans. And then let's say if I hit them again, then it's going to be the Atlas. And then it's going to actually be, let's see, what would it be? The Exos next, the Lancers, etc., etc. So this is really useful if you want to deploy an ability specifically from that unit. So for instance, if I was using the medics here, I could use, let's say, the Nano Swarm or System Shock. Then by just hitting tab twice, I could deploy my Atlas without changing my control group. So instead of having this in a different control group, this will allow me to just basically deploy my Atlas. So this is really important for efficient play. And in my next video in this series, we're going to be talking about this and how I would use it optimally. But what I would recommend you doing now that we're going back to a settings situation is I would recommend you put it on tab. Exactly what it has is the default. But in terms of change focus control group backwards, take it off of shift tab because of the aforementioned Steam issue and put it as shift plus caps lock. This will allow you to really, these two keys are extremely close to the tab button and will allow you to basically shift back and forth in your control group very, very quickly. The columns, command rows, columns, do not worry about this. Don't change any of this. You don't need to. This is another really, really important one to change. So command cancel. So this is if you're building a building, and by default, this is on Y. I would not recommend you do it on Y. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to say, I have mine on escape. The reason is because in StarCraft 2 and most other RTS, in order to cancel a unit, you hit escape, which is on the far left of your keyboard. It's very easy to hit. It's a very big button. That is what I would highly recommend you doing. And then what I would recommend you changing, because when you put this as escape, it's going to say, well, now you can't access the menu because that's what's by default on escape. Change that to F10. That's exactly how StarCraft 2 works. Change that to F10, change the menu to F10, and change the command cancel to escape. What this will do, let me just demonstrate this, is that if I was building a command, so let's just build a command, and let's say my enemy was attacking, so he had units in here and he was attacking my command. I could just literally click it, hit cancel, and now I get that money back, plus 300. I get most of the money back immediately. This is really important to be able to do almost instantly, guys. Like, you need it in a snap of a finger. You need to be able to do this. It's very important. Y, which is the default bound key, is a very bad option in my opinion. I would highly recommend you put it on escape, which is what most other RTS do. Let's see what else. Okay, open option menu. I talked about that already. Put that on F10. Most of these others I wouldn't say are that important, and that is pretty much the most important things you have to know about the options menu. I hope this video was very helpful to you. I tried to make it very in-depth and going over every option. Now, most of these options, guys, I want to make this clear. Most of these options are only utilized in the fullest extent once you can actually use the command card, which is what I'm going to be talking about in the next video. So if you're interested in that, subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with your friends, and I'm going to be making a full guide to how to build units and how to move your army efficiently across the map. And I think you're going to really love it, guys. So I will see you in the next video, and thank you for your time.